My dear friend, John Cook, has been so quiet here, John.
I know, I just want to yell into the mic already.
John, as creative director for 13th Floor Entertainment Group, I mean, that's a pretty big responsibility. Can you talk a little bit about what that job entails?
Well, it's still going for this season. So when I took this job, and Chris brought it to me, he's like, yeah, you know, mostly we're going to focus on LA stuff. You can kind of help have a say in the creative for the rest of the locations. He lied. And I just, you know, it's been really cool growing up here in Southern California, going all to these events, to now be able to extend my reach to other places in the country and bring my team from California out there to do these events has been awesome. Chris handed us the keys to a 100-year-old prison in Chicago that we just got back from, called the Joliet Haunted Prison. Then he sent us out to Phoenix, Arizona in the middle of August when it was 118 into a dirt field.
Because there was no humidity there. There was in Illinois. Phoenix, much drier.
But the treat to that is then we get to come back to Los Angeles and put together the LA Haunted Hayride, which brings us up to now. But other than that, we're also working to develop with a really amazing team that's pieced together from a creative collection all around the country to work on themes and maze overlays and new attractions that spread across the entire 13th floor platform, which I believe is 15 locations across the country. So it's a lot.
It is a lot.
But it's amazing. It's very, very rewarding, very fulfilling to be able to have that kind of creative reach.
I think when John and I first started talking about him coming to work for 13th Floor, you made a comment about a bigger sandbox and more things to do. So I just wanted to give you as big of a sandbox as we could.
You did. Thank you.
Well, you know, before we get into like the creative and writing phases for any of these attractions, we land on a concept. And what better concept for Halloween than an actual good old-fashioned hayride? And, you know, I always kind of looked at hayrides as more of kind of like a Midwest kind of thing, maybe East Coast, New England, fall weather, there's a chill in the air, people are bundled up sitting on haystacks, you know, drinking apple cider type of thing. So to have something kind of like that here in the middle of the concrete jungle of Los Angeles, I think is pretty cool and spectacular, really. But you know, it also has its challenges, its differences. John, you want to talk a little bit about maybe the differences, or at least some of the differences between designing for a singular walk-through maze versus an actual hayride?
Yeah, I think I've mentioned this before, but the hayride essentially is a pop-up event since it happens in such a massively visited park like Griffith Park. In 2019, he had 10 days to set up the entire event, start to finish, which we have now, luckily, got a little bit more time, so that's awesome. But I think the biggest thing that I personally learned going from focusing on very detailed walkthrough haunted attractions where you're right up against the sets, you're now in a hayride 20, 30 feet away from the set. So what I learned is the size of the sets and the spectacle is what really, really reads and is impactful on the hayride. So that's what's great is we learned so much in 2019 about producing something like the hayride and we've now had, unfortunately or fortunately, how you look at it, we've had 2 years to reflect on that and then be able to go back to the drawing board, redesign, and be able to implement into 2021, right?
It is.
Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Awesome. You know, and the hayride also kind of works as a perfect backdrop for us to tell a story. A story about a strange town named Midnight Falls. Yeah. Now, Midnight Falls is strange because it's always trapped in 1985. It's always celebrating its 13th annual Halloween festival, and it's always Halloween night. And so when guests arrive to the event, they walk right into the middle of the Midnight Falls Town Square and into this fall festival. John, dude, I totally remember, you probably don't remember this. I remember we were driving around Rancho Cucamonga, if you know where that is. It was nighttime. We were driving in your old car, your Jeep, and we were getting something to eat. We're just kind of throwing around different ideas on what we could do for this event. And I remember, like yesterday, John's like, "I got it. What if we make this whole thing into a town?" And that was kind of that initial spark. And I also think a lot of it has to do with our shared passion of traditional Halloween. So can you talk a little bit about sort of that concept and how that was derived for Midnight Falls?
It is crazy to think back to when it was just a spark of an idea and then it's now into a full-fledged event. But yeah, Midnight, what I love about Midnight Falls is it's all come together so organically, and it's one of those things where it almost, I don't know, has like some sense of like being home almost, in this like weird little Halloween lives that we live, So I think that's kind of what, to me, ultimately Midnight Falls represents is the love for Halloween and being able to create a town where all of these creatures and characters can live and they all have a sense of purpose, but also are there to scare you as well. So that's kind of the way we wanted to approach it, is just make sure that Midnight Falls feels like a living, breathing town. And I think it's something that we're able to build year after year. And that's what's such a great concept is we can visit different areas of the town, we can bring in different characters, and it can always be evolving.
Yeah, and that story of Midnight Falls spreads throughout the entire event, which I think is pretty unique for this region for an event this size, because all the attractions tie back to that narrative. And then in 2019, in addition to Town Square and the Hayride, we had 3 walkthrough attractions. And then in 2020, despite the changes in the world, people were still able to visit Midnight Falls with our live drive-up experience. Did anybody check that out? Right on. Well, for anybody who wasn't able to go, what was the live drive-up experience?
It was a major pivot. It was, we just wanted to do something for Halloween. We didn't want Halloween to be canceled, So definitely it was outside the box, but I think that was one thing that John and I were on the same page about the whole time, is like, we were gonna do something. We didn't know what it was, but we were gonna figure it out.
Yeah, and I think we had like a chart of things we could do as things progress, and we got all the way down to the live drive-up experience. And that's where we were at when we had to like pull the trigger to make something happen. But no, and it was awesome to be in that same mindset of like, no matter what happens in this world, we're gonna figure out a way to celebrate Halloween with our friends and the people we love. So that's kind of where the live drive-up experience came from. But like Ted was saying, we wanted to make sure that the town of Midnight Falls lives on for the season. And in the spirit of that, we decided to take the town's old drive-in that was recently purchased by a certain Mr. Revolta, who wanted to take it over and try and breathe some new life or death into this place, and that was kind of the general concept that we built off of.
Yeah, and I always kind of described it as like a drive-in movie theater, but like on steroids. You had these live Midnight Fall monsters accosting the poor guests seated in the socially distanced safety of their parked cars. But guess what? That was last year. You ready for 2021? All right. Well, we have a little video for you. Here we go. This is MFAM Radio, and I'm your host, Jack Vincent, wishing you a happy Halloween. Preparations are well underway as everyone here at Midnight Falls is gearing up for the spirit of Halloween to take hold of our beloved fall festival once again. It's time to get those pumpkins carved, shine the tombstones, and dust off those costumes, because we're ready to celebrate the most sinister night of the year. And when the sun sets on Midnight Falls, you never know who or what is waiting in the dark for you.
Have you ever considered growing your hair out, maybe dyeing it blonde like that? Yeah. I thought you were narrating that whole thing.
Yeah.
From here, I felt like you were narrating that whole thing.
It's weird.
So, the spirit of Halloween is tightening its stranglehold on this town of Midnight Falls. And of course, yes, Jack Vincent will be back, the local Midnight Falls radio DJ, in his booth broadcasting from MFAM radio. And just as a little side note, part of the inspiration behind having these radio broadcasts going throughout the event, John and I we're huge fans of John Carpenter's The Fog, if you've ever seen that. And there's the Adrienne Barbeau character, and she's a DJ. You can hear her voice throughout the movie almost like as a narrative. And they did something kind of similar with Hubie Halloween, if you saw that too.
Greatest movie of 2020.
Greatest movie.
100%.
Yeah, but we thought, well, how cool would it be to have these radio broadcasts kind of going out throughout the event, so that way people can hear and learn more about Midnight Falls and the happenings around this place and this festival. And so when you're at the event, listen to some of those radio broadcasts, so that way you can learn more about this strange town of Midnight Falls. Now, speaking of the town, returning, of course, for 2021 will be our town square characters. And these are the kind of your stereotypical small town, like Mayberry trope kind of characters, but they've been stricken by Halloween. John, let's talk about our town square characters.
So real quick, I guess a mini announcement that hasn't been public yet, but I'm sure you've put it together. The event is returning to Griffith Park. However, there is a small construction project, so we are moving within Griffith Park to a different location. And the good news about that, it's allowing us to sprawl out a little bit more and expand our town of Midnight Falls. So the town square is going to be bigger. It's going to have more offerings as far as like food and beverage and more sets and more characters. And the characters really are the lifeblood. Like Ted mentioned, we do have like the voice narration that's kind of the thread that ties it all together. But if you take a minute to interact with the characters, they will offer you the deep dive into what's going on. So I really, really urge you guys, take a minute, engage some of the characters. They're a lot of fun. And that's kind of what Ted's really, really great at, is being able to come up with these really deep backstories and train the actors in a way to really offer a nice deep dive into the stories.
Awesome, yeah, and even though it's like the main kind of midway area of the event, I've never really considered it like a scare zone, because if our characters were out scaring, the natural reaction would be everybody would run away from them screaming, and that's what you want in a scare zone. But we don't want that. We want you to engage and interact with these different characters, so that way you can learn about them, you can learn more about like the deep secrets behind Midnight Falls, and that way you become part of the adventure and part of the story, which is really kind of critical in all this. Now, what town is complete without its mayor? And we have a new mayor in Midnight Falls this season. The one, the only, the late, the great, Monty Revolta, who will be returning. Yes. We love Monty. Let's talk about how much we love Monty.
I can't say enough amazing things about Monty Revolta. So much that I guess we're making him the mayor. But we really liked the idea last year of like kind of like this like sleazy salesman that's going up buying these old establishments, and to the point where he wasn't even voted in, he's just declared himself the mayor, and he's just taken over. And so it's kind of a fun theme that we wanted to continue to build upon is Monty going up and taking over the town.
And just doing his thing, yes, absolutely. So we've got our town square characters locked in, we've got Monty locked in, so let's talk about some of our walkthrough attractions. First up, the return and the reimagining of the Midnight Mortuary. Yeah, and so this represents like that dark house at the end of the street. It's a family-owned and operated business here in Midnight Falls. It's owned by the Marlowe family. And I've always kind of blamed the Marlowes for all the crazy things going on in Midnight Falls, because these folks are into some pretty dark things in those back rooms and the basement of the mortuary. Let's talk about what's going on for the Mortuary 2021.
So, when we approached the 4 attractions at the Hayride, since we only have the 4 attractions, we want to make sure they're all very, very different in feel. The Midnight Mortuary is our traditional, as far as the layout, traditional haunted house. And for this year, we have rebuilt the entire thing. We kept some of the same themes with the Marlowe family, but it's going to be completely different scenes, as well as a pretty expansive outdoor cemetery that the punk vampires have taken over and are throwing their big Halloween party out there.
I love it. Okay, next up is the return of a fan favorite, Trick or Treat. Yeah. I mean, these are the neighborhoods of Midnight Falls, so people can see the residents and their homes. Let's talk about Trick or Treat.
Trick or Treat, from when I was visiting the guests at the Hayride, was always one of my favorites. It's just such a simple yet fun concept. You're trick-or-treating on Halloween night. And what we wanted to do was kind of take that a step further and create this is the neighborhood where all the monsters live that are celebrating Halloween. So you're going to see monsters that are dressed up as their favorite monsters, essentially, which gives it a fun little spin. And what we did this year is we got 2 new house additions, as well as every single house will pack a pretty large scare, which is different. So be careful when you're pressing the buttons. Just a little tip there, make sure you send the person that's annoying you all night, go press the button. So the doorbells, they're not only gonna trigger the monsters to come out and greet you, but it's also gonna each one will trigger a cool scare.
Love it. Okay, next up is the debut, brand new for 2021, the Dead End Diner. All right, so this is another local business at Midnight Falls, but I think with this, people are going to be kind of exploring maybe some of the dark back alleys. Yeah, the back alleys behind the businesses of Midnight Falls. So talk about the Dead End Diner.
So this all kind of started as we wanted to create an old, I don't know how to politely say this, but crappy rest stop that you'd pull off to when you're traveling across the country. So it's this old trucker rest stop with the cornerstone of it being this diner. So as you get into the diner and you see they're obviously eating human meat for dinner, it then takes you on a path of how that food made its way to the table. So you're going backwards through the establishment, back into the kitchens, and then out to where they're slaughtering their dinners. But one thing we want to do with this to make it different and fun, and it's in the name Dead End, is there's actual dead ends throughout the maze where the actors can trap you back there.
I think it's going to be fun.
And it's that's a good way to sell it. But no, it is fun. That's what I love about the LA Haunted Hayride is we're able to have fun with the theme. So you will come across a pack of biker werewolves. You're going to come across the back alley. Can't say it.
Don't say it.
The lot lizards hanging out at the truck stop. But it's a really fun experience. It's got a few surprises in there as well.
Yes. All right, so those are our 3 walkthrough attractions, and of course we're going to have the Hayride itself. And I've always kind of looked at the Hayride as like the back roads, the hills of Midnight Falls, but it's out there where the spirit of Halloween incarnate has its vice grip on this town of Midnight Falls. But of course, this season is primarily going to consist of all brand new scenes. So let's talk a little bit about it.
One of the things we wanted to try and do, like I said, by learning from 2019 and what we found to be successful and things we could build upon, is take certain scenes and either really amp them up or create all new. So I would say at least 80% is brand new on the Hayride this year. And it's going to take you to different places throughout the town, different establishments, as well as out to the Midnight Lake, which was there in 2019, but like I said, it's reimagined, all new, bigger sets, more scares, more actors. And it takes you on this journey throughout the backwoods.
And we will also see a couple of other types of businesses out there.
So I gotta, one of the questions as a designer I always get asked is where's inspiration come from, and I gotta give a huge shout out to my 5-year-old on this one.
Yeah.
Said, Dad, wouldn't it be so cool on the haunted hayride if you go into a pizza place and there's an animatronic band that comes to life and attacks you? Said, yeah, that would be pretty cool. Let's do that. So yeah, just as a fun little note, inspiration can literally come from anywhere. Thank you, Mason. That was a good idea. But so that's one of our fun new themes is visiting the Midnight Theater and this band of animatronic characters that come to life.
Yes, love it. And so those are pretty much the attractions that we're going to be having for this season, but we've been hard at work on some other elements throughout the event, including retail spaces. Let's talk about that.
One of the things we want to do every year is continue to build onto the town itself and make the entire experience become this immersive environment you're walking through. So, as simple as our retail store is facading that and making that part of the experience. So that's, you're gonna notice a lot more of that this year, and in the following years, we're always gonna be continuing to build and build and build to make this real life immersive environment. So we have some really cool new sets coming out in the town square, including this and some other, next slide, Dad.
John's on a mission to eliminate any signage on site that doesn't look appropriate to Midnight Falls. So he's getting there.
Yes.
Yes.
As well as really looking at the food and beverage program as well. That's one of the things where when we took on this project, we wanted to feel like you're out there on Halloween night. So food and beverage is another thing we really looked at. Like, I want to be able to go and get a candy apple and some hot chocolate and hang out in this fall environment. So those are the way we're approaching the town square and the event as a whole.
Very, very cool, very exciting.
Maybe a pumpkin spice coffee or two.
Perfect, yay, yes. Listen, that is pretty much what we have lined up for today. We were going to do a Q&A, but we're not going to be able to do that, but we will all be around the show, so if you have any questions or you want to chit-chat or meet up with us, we're happy to do so. But more importantly, we want all of you to visit us in Midnight Falls this season.